Storytime about how I found out that my best friend screwed my boyfriend. So a little background information. This happened whenever I was between 16 and 21 years old and I was a sophomore in high school. During the summer just before school started, my boyfriend Ryan moved to town. But sadly, whenever he moved here, his mom passed away, so he ended up missing the first 2 weeks of school. Fast forward, Ryan comes to school and he ends up becoming best friends with my guy best friend, and him and I had a bunch of classes together, so we would talk all the time. Obviously, this led to me having a crush on him. So him and I end up dating, and that's whenever we switch lunch tables to sit with my other friends. And then fast forward about 2 months into Ryan and I's relationship, my ex came to my house the one night and he SA'd me. The next day, I told my boyfriend what happened and he agreed that it wasn't my fault, but he said he would need some time to get over it. Fast forward, we end up moving on and we did the nasty a few times. And then my best friend Maddie told me the only reason why he did the nasty with me was because he felt like I was more experienced than him. So I end up breaking up with him because I felt like he deserved better than me. He ended up never speaking to me, but later on I heard a rumor that somebody saw Ryan and Maddie together. So I confront her about it and she told me that she was just comforting him after what I did to him. Isn't it funny how there are those friends who go to comfort your ex during the breakup instead of you? A little sus if you ask me. Fast forward 5 years later, he comes into the place that I work and my work best friend Ashley gives my number to his friend to give to Ryan. So I texted him that night and then I woke up the next morning to a text that says, "Who is this?" And then over that weekend we ended up reconnecting. Then a month later I got kicked out of my house and I moved in with him. And plot twist, 8 months later one thing led to another. He proposed to me. And then 5 months later we also ended up moving into a bigger apartment. Well, I ended up buying him a new phone, and that is whenever I saw text messages between him and Maddie. And they weren't just messages. These messages were very spicy. Also, this is while she was in a relationship with a freshman while we were seniors. I forgave him for lying because obviously we weren't in a relationship, but it's pretty effed up that that was my best friend. And obviously Maddie and I are not friends anymore.
My husband humiliated me at our wedding by shoving my face into our cake. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. Also, I have COVID and I was told that I need to rest, so I'm not filming. I have to repeat content. I'm sorry. I love you guys though. Before we got engaged, my husband and I had only known each other for 3 months. We actually met when we were traveling, so we didn't even live in the same country. This was my first mistake. After we met, he asked me to come visit him again. And I did. I didn't ask him to come visit me. He asked me. Did I pay for my own flight? Yes. Did I split the bill with him? Yes. But here's the thing. He was doing everything else right. He was treating me well, buying me gifts, giving me so much attention, acting like he was already my husband. We got engaged 3 months later and none of my friends or my family knew him. And we decided to have a destination wedding. This meant the only time my parents met him was at our wedding, and my friends. Before our wedding, he and I had not lived together. I was the one that was going to visit him all the time. In preparation for our wedding, I really wanted this one specific makeup artist. And both of our parents decided to pay for the wedding. Our budget for the wedding was $80,000, so it was a lot. The makeup artist I wanted was $3,000. I met with the makeup artist twice. This way we could try out 2 styles of makeup. We finally landed on one that I loved. The hairstylist charged me another $3,000. So my husband knew how much effort I put into my makeup and my hair. Before the wedding, I made him swear that he would not shove my face into the cake. And he agreed. Fast forward to cutting the cake. He pushed my face into the cake so hard, I almost got knocked out. Everyone ran over to me. Part 2 is up. My husband humiliated me at our wedding by violently shoving my face into the cake. Claiming this is not my story time. Also, I have COVID and I'm repeating content because I was told I need to rest. I'm sorry. That's when he grabbed my neck so hard and pushed my face into the cake. He did it so violently that I almost got knocked out. And I was able to pull myself away from the cake. I started falling backward, and that's when my family started running up to me. Before I could fall, my father caught me midair. What was my husband doing? Just looking at me. That's when he yells out, "You are so dramatic." No one, and I mean no one, not even his parents, thought that it was funny. Everyone at the wedding surrounded me asking if I was okay. Even the servers offered a chair and ice. Luckily, my bridesmaids took me to the bathroom, and when I saw the state of my face and my hair, I burst into tears. $6,000 down the drain. $6,000 I was only able to enjoy a third of. The night wasn't even halfway through at that point. That's when they washed my hair and my face. I still decided to make the best of it. I spent the rest of the night dancing without makeup and hair. Did he apologize? Kind of. He said, "My bad." Didn't expect everyone to react like that. And he actually complained that now he was the bad guy. The following day, my parents convinced me to get the wedding annulled. But now he's almost my ex. I was about to leave my family to move to his country. A man that is violent towards you under the guise of a joke actually hates you. He wants to hurt you. Self-care sister out.
Storytime about how I got pregnant by my boyfriend's younger brother and he still doesn't know. So a little background information, I am 19 years old and I'm in college. So my boyfriend and I have been dating for about 2 years and we're going to call him Josh. The 2 years that we've been dating have been super rocky because he would try to hook up with other girls. Well, no, actually he wouldn't try. He would hook up with other girls. And then, him and I would break up and then we would get back together. Just your usual toxic relationship. The main reason why I kept going back to him was because he was super popular. And this made me feel like I was never going to find anybody better than him, so on and so forth. Now, Josh's brother is 21 years old, and somehow, someway, him and I started hooking up. Right around after the time I found out that my boyfriend was cheating on me with my cousin. Yes, my cousin. I'm saying that like I'm not hooking up with his brother. Anyways. Well, one day I realized that I haven't got my period in 2 months, so I took a pregnancy test, and it came back positive. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how I got pregnant by my boyfriend's younger brother and he still doesn't know. So like I said, my boyfriend cheated on me with my cousin and somehow that led to me hooking up with his younger brother. Well, fast forward, one day I realized that I haven't gotten my period in 2 months, so I took a pregnancy test and it came back positive, of course. And the first thing that I did was go to Josh's brother because him and I were hooking up way more than my boyfriend and I were within the past few months. Well, we both came to the conclusion that I should just tell my boyfriend that it's his and see what happens from there. So I told my boyfriend I'm pregnant and he was super happy, gave me this whole speech about how he's going to be a better boyfriend for me and the baby, which in simpler terms pretty much means, yay babe, I'm going to stop cheating on you since you're pregnant, but only because you're pregnant. So now my boyfriend is raising my 1-year-old daughter who he thinks is his and I'm still hooking up with his brother.
Story time about my mom caught me doing it with my neighbor. This all happened 10 years ago. I was 7 years old. Okay, here's the thing. My dad had left my mom and I for another woman. So I was always desperate for male attention. And looking back, this is so terrible, especially for a teenage girl. New neighborhood moved in that summer. And let me tell you, I was obsessed from the moment I saw this boy. I became so obsessed because his window was right across from mine. It was like a movie. He would see me changing, I would see him changing. Of course, I never told my mom. And then my mom actually became friends with his mom. So they started coming over for dinners and they were both single moms, so they connected on that too. Now this boy didn't go to my school though. So we basically only saw each other whenever we were home. Okay, here's where things get messy. He had a girlfriend at his school. This did not stop him from flirting with me. He would stand in his window changing, and because he would come over to my house, he'd come up to my room and we'd just hang out. Both of our moms had a little too much wine one night, and he came up to my room and closed the door. As soon as he closed my door, I knew something was gonna happen. He asked me if I wanted a back massage, and I was like, yeah. As he's giving me this massage, he starts asking me why I don't have a boyfriend. And that's when I told him that I'm probably gonna get a boyfriend very soon, which is a total lie. See, I don't like anybody at my school. And that's when he told me that he would be really jealous if I got myself a boyfriend. I turned around and told him, but you have a girlfriend, so you have no business getting jealous. That's when he grabbed my face and started kissing me. We made out for like half an hour while both our moms are passed out on the couch downstairs. I knew I needed to snatch him away from his girlfriend. What I did next is crazy. Go to part 2. Story time about my mom caught me doing it with my neighbor. Once he started kissing me, we could not stop. I knew he had a girlfriend and I wanted to steal him away from her. So I thought, why not just do it with him so that he would leave her and be with me? That's when I took off his shirt, he took mine off, and things went from there. Let me just remind you that our moms are downstairs sleeping on the couch. Our hearts were racing and we were trying to do it as quickly as possible. By the way, I'm still a virgin at this point, and I just decided right then and there that I would just do it with him. I was being reckless as hell. That's when I hear footsteps coming up the stairs. We jump off each other and we just pretend we're talking. It was his mom coming to tell him that they were going home. My plan worked though. He started messaging me nonstop, and he even blew off his girlfriend that same week to be with me. Told him we could do it the following day if our moms weren't home. His mom went out to run some errands, so I asked my mom to go run me an errand. Evil much? I told him to come over and it happened. And no, it was not good. It was actually terrible. Neither of us knew what we were doing and it hurt like hell. But after that, he was obsessed. Anytime my mom left my house, he would try to come over. One of the times he came over, he asked me if he should break up with his girlfriend. And I said, yeah, you probably should. Duh. He literally called her right then and there and told her that he didn't want to be with her anymore. Then he turns to me and asks me if I want to be his girlfriend. Just to make him more obsessed, I said no. I told him I wasn't ready for a relationship. Then he started begging. He couldn't believe I said no. But this is when we both mess up. We start doing it. Part 3 is up. We start doing the dirty, but I didn't realize that my mom was home. My mom was supposed to be at work, but apparently she came home early because she felt sick. So while me and my neighbor are upstairs full on doing the dirty, my mom is downstairs making lunch. That's when the door blasts open and it's my mom holding my lunch. I have no clothes on my bed. There was no way my mom was gonna buy that. We were just hanging out. My mom throws the plate of food at my neighbor. He tries to calm my mom down and tells her that he's in love with me. But By the way, I was not in love with him. I mean, I liked him, but I wasn't in love. I didn't know what to do, so I just started to cry. Suddenly, my mom calmed down. I have no idea what got into her, but she politely asked him to put on his clothes and leave. As he was getting dressed, my mom told him not to tell his mom anything, that we would keep this a secret. Once he leaves, my mom confesses to me that his mom and her are in a relationship. First off, I didn't even know that my mom swung that way. Then she asked me if I loved him. I had to lie and tell her that I did, so that she wouldn't find out the truth. That I only did it with him so that he could break up with his girlfriend to be with me. My mom gave us her blessing so that he and I could go out. Like I said, this was 10 years ago. Of course, he and I are no longer together, but my mom is still with his mom, so I see him all the time. He still begs me to be with him. I just broke up with my boyfriend, so I think I might give him a chance now. I mean, I did lose my V card to him, but he cheated on his girlfriend to be with me. And he's clingy. Do you guys think I should give him a chance?
Story time about how my boyfriend was seeing another girl behind my back. So a little background information, I was living with my dad and I had just started a new school and I became really good friends with this group of kids. And in our friend group, there was this boy who we're going to call Alex. And him and I hit it off like right away. We had been talking for 2 months. And by the way, during this whole time, his friends were telling me how much he loved me and how much he wanted to be with me. So eventually him and I started dating. And of course, like any other tragic love story, I had to move far away because I had to go live with my mom, blah, 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 blah. But since I would visit my dad for the holidays, him and I would still be able to see each other sometimes, which is pretty good for a long distance relationship, especially when you're in school. So I told him about how I had to move. And he was really sad, but he said that I can trust him. Red flag number 1, because why would you say that in the first place? There should be no reason on why I have to, quote, trust you to be loyal when I'm away. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how my boyfriend was seeing another girl behind my back. So like I said, I told him that we were going to have to do long distance and he was sad, but then he said that he could trust me. And like I said before, why the hell would I have to trust you? Because you should just be loyal in general, duh. So I'm like, hey, I want to spend time with you before I leave. Can we hang out? And he was like, oh, sorry, I have plans, but we can hang out later tonight. So I was like, okay, whatever. And a few hours go by. I never get a text from him or a call, nothing. So I text him and he's like, sorry, I forgot. So I'm really sad right now, but I forgave him. Quick note here, ladies, if he wanted to, he would have canceled his plans if he really wanted to see you. Anyway, so I move and fast forward 2 to 3 weeks and Alex and I literally have only been texting, no calls, nothing like that. So I'm talking to one of his friends and one of his friends tells me that he's been talking to this other girl and he's been telling everybody that he's been wanting to break up with me for weeks because he wants to date her instead, like for part 3.
Story time about how my creepy uncle flirts with me. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. Send me on Instagram. I come from a really big family. My mom has 5 sisters and 1 brother, and my dad has 4 brothers and sisters. All of them have their own kids, so I have a lot of cousins. And this means we have a lot of family get-togethers. Every single weekend, someone is hosting a party. We all get together and eat, and it's actually a really nice time. But there's always that one creepy uncle. In my case, it's my mom's brother. He's 46-year-old and has never married, but he's a bachelor. He's got money, so he basically has a bunch of sugar babies. Whenever my family tells him that he needs to get married, he says he'll never get married to anybody. He thinks women only exist for the pleasure of men. When I turned 16, I noticed that he would stare at me a lot. At first, it was just staring. Every now and again, he never did anything really creepy then, but just the staring was enough for me. I never told my mom about it then, not until I turned 18. This is when he started making comments like, wow, you're growing into your body, or wow, you got great hips. He would make comments about how I was growing up, like, ew. He even told my dad that he needed to keep me away from guys because I was growing up really quickly. And because of my curves, men would think that I was a woman. This is when I finally told my mom that he was making me super uncomfortable. She thought it was funny at first, so I avoided him at all costs. Part 2. Story time about how my creepy uncle flirts with me. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It's me on Instagram. When I told my mom that he was making me super uncomfortable, she laughed it off. She thought it was funny. She said, oh, you know how he is. So from that point on, I basically avoided my uncle every time we were at a family event. When I turned 20, this is when things got even worse. He would ask me things like if I was a virgin or if I had a boyfriend, if I had ever been on dates. And one time he even told me that he would get very jealous if I ended up bringing a guy to one of our family events. One time he complimented me on the dress that I was wearing, so after that, I only wore baggy clothes to family events. The fact that I had to change the way that I dress so that he could control himself makes me sick. I finally told my mom again that my uncle was always bothering me. That's when she told me that the world is filled with men like him, and that all I needed to do was just ignore him. So I told my dad everything. My dad took it a little more seriously and told my uncle that he needed to stop making comments. My uncle just laughed. Part 3 is up. Story time about how my creepy uncle flirts with me. Disclaimer, this is not my story time, it's sent me on Instagram. I finally told my dad and he told my uncle to stop making comments. My uncle just laughed and told my dad that he was overreacting. And that all he said to me was that I was a pretty girl. What a liar. In part 1 and 2, I told you guys that it was getting worse, but here's where it actually gets even worse. Like I said, I have a really big family, so my cousins are growing up too. One of them just turned 13 and my uncle cannot stop staring at her. She's maturing a lot quicker than most 13-year-olds. He's already staring at her. So here's what I did. At the next family event, I sat right next to him. Every time he would stare at one of my cousins or try to make a comment at me, I called him out for it in front of everybody. I even recorded the things that he said. The fact that I even have to do this at a family event makes me sick. Instead of enjoying my time with my family, I have to sit next to my creepy uncle policing him. Anyway, it's totally worth it though. I'm making sure that my cousins don't feel uncomfortable. After I had enough recordings of him saying nasty things, at the next family event, I showed it to my grandma. I basically played it for the entire family. My grandma told him that he couldn't come to any more events if he was going to behave that way. And of course, he apologized to everyone right away. But not to me, he apologized to my dad. After his half-ass apology, he was let back into family events. I don't think that's enough punishment. Give me some ideas because I think I deserve justice. Creepy uncle.
Story time about my worst trip off LSD. So one of the kids in my friend group was about to leave for Arizona. And we would always talk about how we need to trip together before he leaves. And anytime that I would trip off acid, I would go to my one plug. Well, he ran out, so we had to go to somebody else. And I've never tried this kid's stuff before. I just said, fuck it, YOLO. Which should not have been my motto at the time. But it was. So that night, we're in the car, and one of our friends is driving because he's sober, obviously. And before I put the tab on my tongue, I started to get really nervous. And I have never felt like that before I've taken acid. But I kind of just said fuck it, and I put it on my tongue. So we go pick up 2 more people that I'm not really close with. So then we make our way over to our other friend's apartment. And I'm kind of feeling it, but not really. But then as soon as we walk into that apartment, I start tripping balls. And you know, everything was going good. But then my dumb ass decided to look in the fucking mirror. And as soon as I look in the mirror, I see myself smile back at me, like for part 2. Okay, part 2. So like I said, I look in the mirror and I see myself smiling back at me. And that's whenever everything went south so quick. I sat on the bed, tried to pull myself together because I didn't want to make a fucking scene in front of everybody. But then I got caught in this fucking loop. And if you don't know what the loop is, then I'm going to tell you what it is. It's basically where you feel like you're doing the same thing over and over and over again. And then I started looking around at everybody and it looked like their faces were melting. One of my friends got up off his chair, walked to the other side of the room, and I watched him do that. But when I looked back over at the fucking chair, he was still sitting there. So I looked at my one friend that was sober, who I was actually really close with, and I think he saw the look in my eye and he was like, do you want to leave now? And I just shook my head, yeah, like I could not deal with that shit anymore. So we go to his car and then we drive to my boyfriend's house. Because I could not go home. I would have got crucified. Well, we get in the house and as soon as his mom sees me, she knows that something's wrong. Like for part 3.
Okay, part 3. So like I said, I walked in and she knew that something was wrong with me right away. Because she was like, oh, I have a letter from your boyfriend. And usually I would run up, grab it, read it really quickly. Because I would only get like 1 letter a week. But instead I ran downstairs because her face was fucking melting. So 5 minutes later, she has to come downstairs and help me get dressed into my pajamas because I forgot how to dress myself. I didn't want to be left alone that night, so my friend stayed in the basement with me. So he went and tried to go to sleep. But he couldn't because I was watching Butterfly Effect for 8 hours straight. Like, that was the only thing that could calm me down. But I still don't even know all the freaking words to it, which is weird. Like, he would try to change the video and somehow I end up back to Butterfly Effect. And then he tried to kiss me. So he left the next morning because he had to go to work, which was at like 11 a.m. And I took this tab at 8 p.m. the day before. So I was getting texts like, where are you? You're supposed to be home now. So I had to go home and act normal in front of everybody while I'm still tripping balls. And I also got grounded for coming home late because I could not come home at the right time because I was tripping so hard. And this lasted for about 24 hours.
Story time about how my best friend walks around naked in front of my boyfriend. Disclaimers is not my story time, it's sent me on Instagram. The bitch that used to be my best friend, yeah, she's the worst person in the entire world. By the time I met her, my boyfriend and I had already been going out for 6 months. I met her through some friends and her and I got along really well. She was wild and crazy and she brought that wild and crazy side out of me. And at the time it was something that I did need, but I didn't realize just how wild she was. Let me tell you what this girl was like. She was the type of girl that would try to bring up sex in every conversation. Like, no matter who we were talking to, she would always bring up sex. She would always try to impress everyone about how much she knew about it and how much she needed sex all the time. And sometimes I would ask her to not talk about it so much, and her response to that was, "Stop being such a prudy bitch." My boyfriend and I decided to have all our friends over at my apartment for dinner. Since I had just met her, I decided to invite her over. This was the first time she was meeting my boyfriend and all of my friends. And of course, she proceeded to monopolize the entire conversation all night, and all she talked about was sex. Then she went to the bathroom and took off her jacket. She came out in her bra and shorts. Part 2 is a story time about how my best friend walks around naked in front of my boyfriend. Disclaimer, is not my story time, it's sending me on Instagram. That's when she came out of the bathroom in her bra and a pair of shorts. Mind you, we have a bunch of our friends over having dinner at my place. I get up from the table and I ask her what's up. That's when she says that it's way too hot in my apartment and that I needed to turn down the temperature. I told her I'd give her a t-shirt if she wanted to, and she said no. I'm comfortable in my body and I don't care if people look at me. When I look around, I see everyone staring at her. Obviously, all the guys are like oogling her goodies, but all the girls that are there with their guys are instantly upset. That's when my boyfriend bursts out laughing and says, "What's wrong with her?" She just starts laughing maniacally at what my boyfriend said. Then she goes and sits down next to my boyfriend and starts joking with him. You might be thinking I'm so stupid for this, but I decided to let it go. Oh yeah, she's also the type of person that never wants to go home. That's when I had to be honest with her, and I told her that she was making everyone uncomfortable. And I asked her to leave, which she did. A few days later, she comes over to my place so that we can get ready to go out. My boyfriend was gonna go out with his friends and I was gonna go out with her. 2 seconds after she comes into my apartment, she walks out of the bathroom completely naked. And my boyfriend's just sitting there on the couch watching her. Part 3 is up. Story time about how my best friend walks around naked in front of my boyfriend. Disclaimer, is not my story time, it's sending me on Instagram. That's when she comes out completely naked. You could see everything. Boobs, butt, and V. And my boyfriend is sitting on the couch. As she comes out of the bathroom, his jaw drops to the floor. Then she says to me, "Oh my god, I couldn't find a towel, sorry." She walks straight into the guest bedroom where she has her clothes. My boyfriend and I look at each other and I'm completely disgusted. He, on the other hand, thought it was hilarious, so he starts laughing. Then she comes out of the guest bedroom in panties and a bra. I mean, I guess at least she wasn't naked this time. That's when I tell her, "Do you need help getting dressed or something?" She says, "Oh no, girl, I'm just thirsty. I'm gonna get something to drink." So I said to her, "I'll get you something to drink. You can go get dressed." At this point, I had it. But guess what? This wasn't the last time. A few weeks later, I wanted to go to her place to get ready this time. But then she insisted on coming over to mine instead. That's when I got the feeling that she had done all of that to get my boyfriend's attention. And I straight up told her, "Are you just walking around naked at my place just because you want my boyfriend to see you?" Of course, she denied it. She says, "He's cute, but he's not that cute." What? Part 4 is up. Story time about how my best friend walks around naked in front of my boyfriend. Disclaimer, is not my story time, it's on Instagram. At this point, she had been naked in front of my boyfriend twice, but it wasn't the last time. She came over to pick me up one time and I told her to wait for me downstairs. Well, instead of waiting for me downstairs, she decided to come up to my apartment. While I was in the bedroom changing, my boyfriend let her in. That's when she comes straight into my bedroom without even knocking and says, "Hey girl, do you have a dress I can wear?" The dress she was wearing was absolutely perfect. I asked her why and she said that she didn't feel sexy enough. Without even me saying yes, she started raiding my closet. Then she pulls out a very expensive dress I had not even put on yet. My boyfriend was standing in the doorway just watching the whole thing go down. I look at my boyfriend and he just rolls his eyes at me. Then out of nowhere, she takes off her dress and she's completely naked underneath. She looks at my boyfriend and says, "Oh, sorry, I didn't see you there." My boyfriend turned around and walked away. I finally closed the door and confronted her about it. She told me that I'm a prude and that I needed to relax. I kicked her out and we haven't spoken since. She's been begging to talk to me and hang out. My boyfriend told me that if I felt uncomfortable around her, then for her not to come over. But he says that he's fine with her. His reaction also upset me too. What should I do?